First of all, Mary, thank you so much for coming on the show. Maybe you could just start off with introducing yourself and kind of give us a rundown on your Air Force career.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Mary Polanco. I am originally from Pennsylvania, entered into the Air Force at age 18, and went into security forces. I did that for about 3.5 years, and then loved the Air Force, but wanted to try something new, so I cross-trained into the medical world as an ophthalmic technician. After that, about 10 years of doing that, I, again, wanted to try something else, and I went into being a professional military education instructor. And so I got a hardship tour out at Hawaii for 4 years and got to teach, and that was amazing. Went back to the medical world for a couple of years, and then I think there's a theme here. I, again, wanted to try something new, and I went to DC to be an enlisted legislative fellow, which basically means I was a staffer for a senator for a year, which was a whirlwind experience.
Oh my gosh.
And then I ended my career out. Yeah, lots of stories there to share. But then I went and finished my career out at the Pentagon in the Integrated Resilience Office as their senior enlisted advisor. So it's a little bit of a rundown for my career. I am married to a tennis instructor, and our kids are 13-year-old daughter and 9-year-old son. Yes, they play tennis. No, I do not, which I need to. But yeah, and we call Maryland home right now. So
Oh, that's
a little
awesome.
bit about me.
That's awesome. So when you were a PME instructor, what PME did you teach?
So the schoolhouse out in Hickam, Hawaii is dual schoolhouse. So it's Airmen Leadership School, first line supervisors, and then the non-commissioned officer academy, the next level. So both, actually.
Oh, nice. Now, what kind of hobbies do you have?
So I probably, if you could see behind me, a bunch of markers. I am a crafty person. I actually make greeting cards. I know it's very niche, but love it. I have a great time with that. I have a hobby channel that I share all kinds of techniques with, and other things. I'm really into personal development as well, and so that's kind of like the split. If you are watching, you can see behind me, but if you're listening, there's a split between self-development books and markers.
So I think our interests are aligned on the self-development side, and we talked a little bit before the show on your channels. So you have 2 YouTube channels. One is for your hobby, the Mary Polanco Designs, and you're saying you're almost 40,000 subscribers. So if there's any card makers out there, you need to go check her out for sure. And then you have your other one, which is the Live Well channel. And that's where I came across your content and learned of Mary, and it was really, really interesting because the searches that I do is a lot with the self-development type stuff and mindset and living your life intentionally and that kind of stuff. And you came across on my feed, and then in one of your videos you mentioned that you were a retired chief, and I was like, no way, that's so cool, man, I got to get her on the show. So that's how I came across your stuff. But I think both channels, you put out some really, really good content, and definitely I think for anyone who's thinking about it and listening in the Air Force to get that self-improvement, live your life intentionally, and mental health. You have a huge background in the resiliency side for the Air Force. I think they should absolutely go check out your stuff. So thanks for that awesome content. So when did you enlist in the Air Force?
So the year was 1999. So we're back in the 19th century or the 21st century, right? What is it? 20th century?
As my son says, he says.
But as my kids would say, the 1900s.
Yeah, the late 1900s is what my son says. It makes me feel really old. So I enlisted
late
in the same year as well.
Yeah. So 1999, I entered when I was 18 and right out of Pennsylvania, right from home. I spent my entire life in the same house, went to high school with the same kids I went to kindergarten with, and decided I was ready. And I'm the youngest of 8 children, so I really felt like I needed to spread my wings.
No, so why did you decide to enlist in the Air Force?
Well, I was working as a waitress. I was going to Penn State University, one of the branch campuses, for my first semester. And I really was feeling a little bit lost. I didn't know what direction I wanted to take my academia. I really didn't have a passion for a major. And so I felt like I'd be spending a lot of money to do something I didn't even know I wanted to do. And so now was the prime time for me to sort of see a little bit of the world and figure out if I can find those answers in the Air Force.
Got it. So did you have the intention of making it a career, or were you thinking just like 4 years, 6 years and get out and move on?
If there was a 2-year enlistment, I would have signed up for 2 years. It was no. No, it was 4 years. They even offered me money, a bonus
Nice.
to do the 6. Looking back on it now, that would have been a good financial decision. But no, I really just wanted to kind of get a few years. I felt like it would give me a 4-year breather, but still do something meaningful and productive. Yeah, no, I was 4 years and I was going to figure out my whole life and then leave.
Is that it? All in 4 years? No,
All in 4
no,
years.
no. What
Yeah,
made
that was
you
the
what
plan.
made you re-enlist and then eventually just make it a career?
Yeah, so that, well, really what made me re-enlist was the opportunity that I was given to cross-train. I loved the idea that the whole concept of the Air Force, particularly, I loved. I really did. I loved the camaraderie. I loved the opportunities to learn, like all the things. But the first job I had in security forces, it didn't quite fit my temperament, and I felt a misalignment there. And so the fact that I was afforded an opportunity to try something new, that was pretty much, I can tell you this, the day I got the cross train acceptance, I said, well, I'm a lifer. Like I knew it at that point.
Yeah.
And so that's why I just continued to stay. I just really was drawn to the medical field. And yeah, that's really what made me continue on.
Wow. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the Ophthalmic AFSC. We talked a little bit before. It is a pretty small AFSC with roughly about, you said about 400 people. So tell us a little bit about kind of what is ophthalmic,
Yeah.
and kind of what would you do day to day?
Sure. Now, this is definitely going to be a biased response, but just go with it. because the ophthalmic techs, I feel that career field is just such a hidden gem. It's an opportunity to work with patients in a setting where you're caring for them, but there's not as much of the potential challenges that and sort of the challenges that other technicians might have to face with having to care for sick people every single day. In the ophthalmic world, we mostly see healthy patients, and so it's just this really happy medium for me at that time, to be able to care for them, to get them the care that they needed, in order to be able to see, which is, let's face it, very important, and then to also just work on some of those additional things with regard to their eye health care. And that's something that we really don't talk about a lot, because if you can see fine, you're in second grade, you get your little chart test and you can see fine, you're not referred to go further. But what I learned in that process so much about the health of our eyes and the importance of actually getting seen, even if you don't need glasses. So it was just this eye-opening experience for me into a part of the body, the part of our own ecosystem that I had never ventured into understanding. So getting geeked out right now, sorry, about that piece of it. But no, so really the day in the life of a 4V, that's what the AFSC is, 4V, is essentially you're doing a lot of administrative work as well. So you're managing schedules, you're checking in patients, you're screening for pre-diagnosis, you're helping the optometrist Sometimes it depends on the level at which the optometrist is comfortable. You might actually do some of the exam while they're with you so that you can learn more skills. So you're fitting for glasses. You learn how to fix glasses. I was the resident sunglass fixer at home if there was something awry. So yeah, lots and lots of skills that I didn't even know existed in the realm of being an ophthalmic tech.
Oh, nice. So so fixing sunglasses, that's a good life skill. So what did the tech school experience kind of be like? I know you were a retrainee, so it probably wouldn't be the same as a first term airman coming in, but what did you learn in tech school kind of, and then are there any certain challenges that came along with tech school that you found that that first term airman may have had?
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction that you made, that I was a cross trainee. So my day-to-day life in tech school was a bit different than a first-term airman. However, the school itself, the training itself, we were all on the exact same playing field. Not one of us knew anything about what we were entering into. So that team dynamic I felt was really interesting. And I know the first-term airmen gained military experience from us, but we gained just, starting over experience with them, so that was kind of cool. But the tech school experience itself was just running through things that, you might look at the day-to-day, you're checking in patients or you're ordering glasses, things like might be day-to-day, but the tech school experience sets you up for so much more than that, which is great. You learn the anatomy, like every piece
Oh my goodness.
of anatomy of the eye, which is fascinating. Like, you have no idea.
I took anatomy class one time. It was fascinating, but it was a difficult class.
It's a doozy, but there's a whole 3 months of just the eyeballs. So that was really cool. But then we learned a lot. There's a lot of math involved, in fact. So definitely doable math. I am a self-proclaimed non-fan of the math situation. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. But yeah, there was, learning how to read glasses under something that looks like a microscope, and learning how to put in contact lenses for people, and just really basic hygiene that when in the medical professionals, key components to safety for the patients. Like, there's so many aspects of that technical training school that are so fun. I think that was probably one of the highlights of my career, was learning in tech school. It was so fun.
Wow. So, so each block usually has an end of course test of some sort. So if you're learning how to put in contacts for somebody, is there like a practical for that? You actually have to like put in the contact in one of your classmates or something?
100%, yes. And that, it's funny that I know I brought it up, but it's funny that you come back to it, because I never put contacts in. I never wore glasses. I was terrified of that block. But I think, more so I was terrified of losing my job at the time. So I said, buck up, Mary, you got this. And so, yeah, I practiced putting them in myself first. And then, there's a practicum for pretty much everything. Whenever you're screening in a patient with, it's just you and that patient, you want to make sure that you're prepared to run through those tests in the correct way, in the correct order, because you're essentially, you're walking in with this pre-work for the doc, and if you want to make sure you're doing everything right, because this is the health of someone is on the line. And so really important that the tech school sets you up for that, and they do a great job at it, for sure.
Yeah. So after you graduate tech school, what would a young person think about? What would they experience when they got to their first base? I know they're entered into upgrade training for their 5 level. What would OJT look like, and what would upgrade training look like for them?
Yeah, so it depends on where, you learn the basics in tech school, and then when you get to your first assignment, the mission might vary a little bit at each of those bases. So let me give you for example, you might go to a base that doesn't have a lot of flyers, pilots, etc., because they don't have a runway, let's say. Right? They don't deal with aircraft. There are places like that, few and far between. But if you go there, then there's going to be less of an emphasis on the aircrew side of the house. And why I bring that up is the aircrew side of the house has a lot more specifications for what they need. And so you compare that to a place that does have a lot of flyers, then your on-the-job training is going to look different because it's going to be based on what you're going to be doing every day. And so that's the first thing to consider. So when you get to your first duty station, you're going to have your trainer and you're going to work through a lot of what you learned in tech school and then a lot of specifics that you're going to be doing at the job. Things that we don't practice in tech school, like customer service, that's going to be something that maybe you get to practice more so on the job when you get to your duty station. So yeah, it's going to be reaffirming and just kind of reiterating things you learned those first 3 months, but then getting proficient at them.
Okay.
And no one's expecting you to walk into your first duty station being perfect, you know?
Yeah. So how long does it normally take to get your 5 level?
It usually takes you have a year, I
okay.
believe, to work on. So you have lots of time, and your supervisor, your trainer is going to be working with you through each and every bit of that. It's not overwhelming. Again, a lot of the study material are things that you've already done, because that has to be a little bit more generic than specified at your base. So it's kind of a 2-part series, right? You have your study material and then you have your on-the-job proficiency. And so, yeah, your trainer, your supervisor walks through, make sure you know how to do everything. I would have to say, of all of the AFSCs that I've had, I could say that, this probably has to be the lowest, I don't want to say lowest threat. What do I want to say? Sort of the smoothest, because you're doing it every single day. And so it's just, it's not, I would say it was probably the smoothest transition was in Ophthalmic Tech.
Oh, wow. So what does the duties look like day to day for someone who may be a 3, 5, 7 level? What would be the difference in duties?
Oh, the difference between them? So for the 3 level, definitely practicing the things you're going to be doing the most. So you're going to be screening patients. You're going to be running through the administrative systems to order glasses for folks, sending the orders off to the labs, checking glasses, making sure that they were made correctly before we give them out to the airmen. You're going to work with the scheduling system, learn that process. The 5 level is going to be probably moving into a little bit more of those ancillary testing places. So if you are coming in not for glasses, but let's say you're coming in for you have a diagnosis of an eye condition. There's testing that the technicians run for the doc, and then the doc will come and look at the results. Just like if you went to radiology, you would get your x-rays done, and then the doc would talk to you about the x-rays. Well, it's the same concept with the eyes. And so then you have your 7 level would move up to a lot more of those managerial programs. So there's programs that make sure we're staying in compliance and that we're working through following a lot of the Air Force regulations, instructions. Those 7 levels are going to be the supervisors and the managers of the clinic to make sure that everything is running the way it needs to.
Okay. So what are some of the general misconceptions that maybe someone who coming in the Air Force may have about the ophthalmic career field, or other people in the Air Force kind of on the outside looking in?
Well, I'm not sure a lot of people know we exist. So I
There's only
would say
400
our
of you.
sheer existence might be, it might be looked over. But I think when you, it's almost like, when you tell a civilian you're in the Air Force and they say, do you fly fast? It's like, no, we do a lot more. It's the same when you say you're in the med group. Do they say, oh, you draw blood? No, no. It's the same concept. But I think for the ophthalmic techs, I think we're a little underrated, if I could say, because we really do, we help people see. And that is a really important thing when you talk about
you don't want to take that for granted.
So, yeah. Don't want to take it for granted. We're all important. We are all part of the mission. But, again, bias speak here. But no, I also feel like you should think that your AFSC is the best and the most important. I think that's the pride there is good. But yeah, I think that the fact of not really knowing the intricacies of what, and this is another thing that I think medical people will understand where I'm coming from with this, but the optometry clinic is sort of a microcosm of the whole clinic. And when I say that, I mean, if you go see your provider and then they refer you to radiology or they refer you to immunizations or refer you to whatever, you're then going to a different entity to accomplish that next task, that next test that you need. In the optometry clinic, we are all the things eyes. So if the doc sees something, we have sort of our own radiology because we do it. We take the photos of the eyes, when you're dilated, things like that. They refer the patients, you need glasses. So they send them to the tech up front to sit, get fitted, measured, order the glasses, those types of things. So we are really multifaceted within the clinic. And I think that's something I did not know until I was a part of it, which makes us unique. And I like that about
That's pretty cool. So what about some of the pros and cons of your career field?
So pros, I think, like I had kind of mentioned in the beginning, being that I got the best of both worlds to not necessarily have to care every single day for folks that were feeling their worst.
Yeah.
And that's the opposite in optometry. People come in healthy and we get them what they need. So that's a huge pro. Also, the niche of the study was really really interesting, and I loved that. I get geeked out to this day talking about it. It's just really cool. But I think some of the cons, the oversight of the clinic can feel sometimes like you're not as included or, mentioned because it's not one of the major jobs for technicians. And we are very small. Yeah. And I also think another con would be manning. I think that it's like I had mentioned, we're so multifaceted. I always felt like we could have used more help to see more patients, but I think that's a problem everywhere. So.
Oh, wow. So I don't know, I'll be honest. So I'm not too familiar with most of the medical career fields. The only time that I actually interacted with them were from like whenever you did your PHA, your annual physical health assessment, or over at Lake and Heath, the PRP stuff, have to walk around with your medical records with a bright orange sticker on. I don't know if they still do that or not. But I think it's one of those extremely, I guess, just not thanked enough, right? Because we don't even think about our health until we like have bad health, and then we like start, I guess, moaning and groaning whenever we don't feel good. So you guys see us human beings, airmen, at our lowest usually. Like I got really bad vision, or I guess I assume that you also do like if someone had like an eye injury of some sort. Is that right too? Yeah. So you see people at their worst, right? And usually when we're at our worst, we tend not to say thank you too much. So I think that's probably most medical career fields as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's it's hard. It's hard to muster up gratitude when you're feeling great. So imagine you go in there and you're feeling terrible. It can be a challenging experience. And I think that's where the camaraderie of the medical team is very, very important, because we need to remind each other every single day the importance of our existence and what we're there to do. And if I can just, I know we're talking about the medical world, but broad spectrum, that really is important for every single airman across the institution, is to really remind yourself and your teammates of why you're there, what's your purpose, and that can get really hard when you're an ancillary clinic, small clinic in, the medical field. That was challenging, and it was something that we tried to do every day. When our airmen, myself, when we would get a little bit demotivated, it's important to say, hey, listen, without you doing this, I mean, we have pilots up in one, which isn't even the most important piece, multi-million-dollar aircraft, but we have pilots' lives at stake. And so if there's something off about their glasses or contact lenses and they can't see, or it's a bad fit, or they get an infection, like these are critically and directly aligned with the mission.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So this career field is actually one of the unique career fields, in my opinion, on in the Air Force in general, that it has a direct copy and paste equivalent in the civilian world, right? So you come out, I assume, with some sort of like very specific training that's directly translatable into the civilian world. Are there any kind of certifications that directly flow over to the civilian side?
Oh, yes. And we actually have, I love that our certifications are a mandate for certain skill levels. I think that's wonderful, because you're exactly right. You can step right out into the civilian sector and it'll translate. The experience in the type of patients that you were with in the service might vary from the civilian sector, but yes, absolutely. So the highest level that I attained, because certain skill levels, like I was a 7 level, and so we got the certified para-optometric certification, and that's a national certification. You have to study for it. You have to go get a proctored exam, and a practicum as well. And they, back when I did it, they did include your tech school training and your experience in the Air Force as your practicum. I'm not sure, I can't speak on it if they do that 100% today, but that was a really helpful piece to it, because you had to take the exam only. So yeah, great distinction you're making there is a correlation to the civilian.
So who would make a really good fit for this career field? I know it's, like we talked about, it's kind of small. So someone putting it on their AFSC list is probably, the odds are probably not in their favor in getting it, only because it is such a small career field. But if they did put it on their list, who would make a good fit for this career field?
I think the willingness to work with people with patients, like not just patients, but having patients. I think customer service is so important, because we can teach all of the administrative pieces. We can teach better customer service for sure, but the willingness and the desire to work with people, I think, is key.
Yeah.
Because I have always believed when people came into our clinic, I wanted them to have an experience, a positive experience. There's going to be enough out there in their day, mission critical, overwhelmed, task saturation. At least for the half hour to an hour they're with us, let it be a good experience for them. And so I would encourage people who have that desire, this is definitely for you, and all the other stuff can be taught.
Wow. So would this be a good fit if someone who is actually thinking about getting into optometry and they just kind of want to put their toe in the water to see, and then get out, use their GI Bill, and then try to go to med school of some sort? Would that be a good career path for someone?
I believe so, yes. Especially if you're unsure. If you're like, well, let me dabble, let me see.
Yeah.
I think so for sure. We actually had one of the airmen I used to supervise. He got out, I think he got out at 2 years. Back then there was a sort of waiver he could get approved. And he went directly into optometry school. And so, absolutely. And then a lot of times, I've known a few people have done that and then come back in the service as an optometrist. And so that's, again, using the GI Bill, he basically went to optometry school for, nothing, which is huge. So that's a definite career path if that's something you're interested in, yeah.
Are there any kind of special duty assignments or anything like that with this career field? I know some of them have like presidential support or working for over an office on NAOC or something like that. Are there any kind of specific special duties assigned specifically for the career field?
There aren't any special duties that would take you completely out of, but there is what we call a shred out.
Okay.
And that is once you've been an optometry technician in the optometry clinic, and I'm going to start to use words here that are, just bear with me. But there's two types of eye specialists. There's the optometrist, and then there's the ophthalmologist. The optometrist is the person who does a lot of the annual exams, gets your glasses, prescriptions, does some basic optometry of the health of the eye, screenings, things like that. The ophthalmologist is the surgeon hand of that. So the optometrist doesn't do surgery, the ophthalmologists do surgery. So if you need repair inside the eyeball or, outside, like things like that, that's going to be an ophthalmologist. And so for the technicians, you'll come in as an optometry technician. They're all called ophthalmic, but you'll come in as an optometry clinic technician. And then if you'd like to shred out, if you would like to work in surgery, then you would go to an additional school, be selected and go to an additional school, and then you would have that shred out, what we call, on your identifier for your AFSC. And then you can work in surgery clinics that do those things with the ophthalmologist.
Oh, and that's some really good information. So I assumed that they were all the same. Obviously, I was wrong. So what's the requirement to get that shred out? Is there like a time in service, like a skill level requirement associated with that?
Yeah, so you would have to you'd have to be a 5-level, this is, and I put the caveat here because this is just changed and it could change again. So just keeping those things in mind. But the intent now is to have that experience as an optometry tech first, because we want to make sure ophthalmology is, I'll just use me as an example. That is not for me. I have a very weak stomach. An optometrist doctor one time asked me to assist her with something that was very minor, and I almost passed out. And so we want to make sure that we get the right people into that job. I would never volunteer to go into surgery. And so there are a lot of people that would. And so really it's the desire to do it. And it's, having been an optometry technician first, those are really the first two prerequisites. And then if there's openings, we have what's great about us being so small is our career field manager, our chief at the head of the career field on the enlisted side, it's smaller so they can get to know everybody and get to know where best placement would be.
So what is the salary associated with the difference between, say, an optometry tech and an ophthalmologist tech on the outside?
In the Air Force? Oh, I was going to say, if there's a bonus that I didn't know about, I might be able to be an ophthalmology tech. I don't know that I could speak with clarity on that. I wouldn't want to mislead, and I would be guessing. So I'm not sure. I know that just as I described the certifications on the optometry side, there are equivalent certifications on the ophthalmology side. So we have 3 levels on the optometry side. We have 3 on the ophthalmology side. So I'm not quite sure what the pay would look like between the two.
Okay, so this is all new information to me. So I'm actually kind of excited learning the difference between the two. Now I can actually, as I mentioned before the show, my mom is an X-ray tech, so I can speak intelligently about this stuff without her looking down upon my lack of education. So I really appreciate the going in a little bit deeper on the difference between those two. So is there anything that you think that I might be missing that maybe someone who's thinking about coming in the career field, they'd like common questions that you may come across, or any kind of new information that would be extremely useful for them in making that decision to put it on their list or not?
I think the common question that I hear with people entering is tech school hard? Like, I feel like that's a pretty common question. I would say the answer to that without hesitation is no. Hard being something that is, I recall we would study, we would work together, we came together as a team. It was more exciting and fun than it ever was negatively challenging. It was just the right amount of challenge. And it was just an awesome experience. So to those that would ask, which I don't know if you get that question a lot, but is tech school hard? I would say don't even worry about that piece of it and just go in with open eyes and excitement, and you're really going to enjoy it. But no, I'm really glad you asked about the special duty piece of it, because I think that helped us explain a little bit differently between the ophthalmology and optometry.
Yeah.
I didn't know that existed either. So,
So to answer your question, yes, I get that question a lot. That and is basic training hard, and it's such a difficult question to answer because it's subjective. It's depending on the person. But in general, my philosophy is that pretty much anyone can pass basic training, and pretty much anyone can pass at any sort of tech school, except for I think probably more the physically demanding AFSCs, the special warfare type stuff. Those are probably a little bit more difficult. But in generally speaking, the other 95% of the AFSCs, if you study, the Air Force is really good at tech school in just water hosing you full of information, right? You just have to know a massive amount of information in a very short amount of time, right? Because it's in the interest of the Air Force to, try and produce as many qualified personnel as possible and get them in their career fields and actually start doing what it is they're trained to do. So, so it's difficult. Almost all of them are. But just like you said, so I was 1 Charlie 3 command post, and then I retrained into the 3 Echo 7, which is the crash fire rescue. And it was in both of them. It was a camaraderie. We all did study groups together, and we all studied. Like, if anyone didn't understand a concept, then another person taught it. And they say the best way to know if you've understood something is if you can actually teach it. So. Get involved, to get in study groups, and absolutely, and that's across all the AFSCs, right?
Yeah, and I think too, like you hit the nail on the head with the subjectivity of that question, because really the answer to the question is a question, and that would be, well, what's hard to you? Because I think life can be seen as hard, like just so really just understanding that. I mean, I think that's something we probably need to eradicate from. I know we're going down a different, but we need probably to eradicate hard out of the equation, because really anything worth doing and feeling proud about and accomplishing, it's never going to be a cakewalk,
Yeah.
You're going to have to put in some effort.
Yep.
But yeah,
110%
I love how you
agree.
describe
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Okay, so in conclusion, I tend to ask all the guests this question, and that's if your daughter, son, cousin, whoever, came to you and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about enlisting in the Air Force." What words of advice would you give them on how to go about their Air Force career, enlisting, and then also how to be successful in the Air Force, generally speaking?
My first question would be, or my first piece of advice would be, to continue doing your research. This is a life-altering decision that you're about to make. And so asking people who've experienced it, who can share their perspectives, I think really helps you make the best decision for yourself. That's really the first key. Like, I know that I retired as a chief master sergeant, and if my child wanted to go in, they wouldn't only hear from me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they would hear from a multitude of people. And so I think that's a really important piece. I did not do that, and I had no one to talk to about it. My mom would tell you I was impulsive in my decision. So I would say it would be important to do that. And then to have a successful career in the Air Force, I think a piece of that would be, first of all, an understanding of all of the things that you have the potential to learn, and diving in with both feet, and really just being open to opportunities of growth and learning. That was probably the thing I did the best in my whole career. Was I went in and said, I've never done that, or I've never seen that, and I'd like to try something new, and having this growth mindset. I think if you enter that, even when it seems hard, even when it's challenging or you're going through hardship, looking for those opportunities of how can this teach me something? What can I learn from this experience? You will never go wrong if you kind of hit every scenario with that mindset.
Great words of advice. And that seems to be a common theme amongst the other guests as well. And I would tend to absolutely 110% agree on just being teachable, being open to learning new things, because there's a lot to learn, not just on the individual career fields, your actual job, but like Air Force in general, leadership, mentorship, following. Like there's so much to learn within the Air Force environment. But that also, in my opinion, probably makes it one of the greatest things, right? Is that we are learning those things and we become more resilient through it. That we add more depth to our knowledge and experience, right?
Yeah, and I think I was in 12 years, up until 12, 13 years, I kept saying, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Because I just didn't, I was still on the journey of life figuring things out. And then I became a leadership instructor, and I was home. And I said, this is what I want, this is it. So the Air Force, because I took advantage of the opportunity, I found my passion. And so the Air Force afforded me that chance. And so that's why we say, try new things. You'll figure it out as you go. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Mary, I really appreciate you coming on the show. And I mentioned it before, I really love to have you back on to talk specifically just about self-development and resiliency and stuff. I know that's a little bit of a passion of yours, and you also have a lot of experience in it with the Air Force. But I think it's such a critical thing. We talk about resiliency and just kind of brush over it as if it's just kind of a term. But like resiliency is a lifestyle. And so I think there's a whole depth of stuff that we could probably talk about on that. And it's a bit of a passion of mine, and I think it's a bit of a passion of yours as well. So I'd love to have you on again on that. But first of all, or in closing, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show and talking to us about your AFSC.
Oh, thank you so very much for having me and for allowing me to brag on the 4 Bs a little bit. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much again, Mary.